Today, what we are building are some serverless functions, ones that get kicked off, talk to an API, and then shoot me a link to a random dog picture each morning. I don't think this is necessarily something that someone would need to build in practice, but it goes through a lot of important things that are useful on their own. And I was just looking for a way to capture them all. So what this is going to encompass: number one, cron jobs; two, APIs, both the COI and then Postman; three, Netlify, specifically the serverless functions; four, Twilio for text messages; and then five, Mailgun for emails. Let's get to it. I'd like to clarify the difference between an API and a webhook. There may be times where it's confusing, and I think it really helps to level set. In this video, we will be using APIs. So what is an API? An API does something when you ask it to take action. A lot of the text services that you use will have REST APIs so you can query. So I'm going to make a call on my end to a specific endpoint with or without a list of parameters. And then what is a webhook? A webhook doesn't wait for you to ask it something. It takes action when some criteria you set is met. In non-tech terms, we can think of a good example is looking for a podcast that you want to listen to. Go to the podcast website, I can browse and I can search for something. So if I want to find a DevOps podcast, I can type in DevOps and then get a list of the DevOps podcasts. Now, if I want to pick one and I want to subscribe and follow and be notified when there is an update for a certain podcast, that would be the webhook. So searching for the podcast, that's the API query. Getting notified when there's a new podcast I set that I want to know about, that's the webhook. To test out the API stuff, we're going to be mostly using Postman, which is a really great tool. It's the de facto for experimenting with APIs. They also have a lot of features. You can do a lot of things in API development, but we will be using the very basics. It's honestly like owning a luxury or sports car like a Lamborghini and just driving it to the market and back. Hopefully you'll actually take her out to the open road, do some cool things and not just go get eggs. But for here, we're just going to keep it simple. So go ahead and sign up for Postman if you don't already have an account. I'd recommend getting the app and downloading that to your desktop. But if you don't want to take up too much space, or maybe it's tough, some changes depending on what kind of operating system you have, I'm going to use browser for this example. Going to go to your workspace from the browser. We're going to make GET requests for all of these, and we're just going to test it out with google.com. Make sure it works. All right, a lot of things got returned back to me, and let's go ahead and see and visualize. Great, and then it returns google.com. Pretty cool. So it all works wonderful. Now, what are we going to do with those GET requests? Set up an endpoint for us to hit, of course. We're going to do this with serverless functions. I'm going to work under the assumption that there is a bit of an understanding of generally what a server is or what a backend service might look like. Many times you might see something built out with controllers, functions, other things that work together in a project. They're all deployed and up, waiting for work. But if we have something that doesn't need to always be up, let's say something that only gets hit once a day in the morning to send me a dog image, it feels silly paying for it to be up. That's where serverless functions come into play. They're little endpoints that are split up and can be called when needed. You only pay for what you use. These are good for one-off tasks. In this instance, we're using Netlify. A server for the free plan is also very generous. Great developer tools. We can have that up. But for all intents and purposes, it's a good practice to learn about serverless functions. There are a lot of options out there for ways to spin serverless functions up. I'd say the most common ones that I see are AWS Lambda, with or without the serverless framework. But personally, we're using Netlify for this. They have a great free tier, as I mentioned. They're really good for developer tooling. They're using Lambda under the hood, but just makes it really easy for you to just get up and running without having to worry about AWS stuff. Let's start with getting signed in, set up with Netlify, provisioning a Netlify account. I'm going to have one already provisioned, so you're going to have to excuse me when you go through this. Should be pretty simple to get up. I would recommend authenticating with GitHub. Once you're all set up, it should be pretty intuitive to get through this. We're going to go to the CLI for a bit, create a project to use, and then import it over here once we get into Git. To save us some time, I already have a skeleton project set up here. It's Netlify serverless demo. I have one directory public, and inside of that I have index.html with potentially the most basic index.html page you could possibly come up with. This will be the page that's going to come with the site that I get up, but really the magic is going to live in the functions folder. Now that I have that project provisioned, Git's not set up yet, but I'm going to assume you know how to do that, and I'll do it behind the scenes. We're going to install Netlify. I should already have this installed, but let's see. Great, so I see I have Netlify's CLI set up. Authenticate here. Great, I'm already logged in, but this would prompt you to be authorized. Great, so we're going to do the init, but I'm gonna set up the Git project first. All right, so I have a project that I have committed. It's private, but it'll be public by the time the video comes out. And then I have Netlify here, so I'm going to init the project. You can skip the build command. We don't have anything that we need to do. Directory to deploy, public. Functions folder, we're going to keep that as Netlify functions. That's where we'll be doing our serverless functions. And we're going to create the Netlify file. All right, so I have my Netlify deployed. It has these things as my public. It has the, I'll just show you. You can see. So there's no build command in this file. The functions live in Netlify functions. That's where we'll be doing a lot of our work. Publish the public directory, and then here we are. All right, so we can see in GitHub, I have the full project here. So there's just the public, there's the get-ignore file, and there's the Netlify file. The public has the index.html. Super basic. And then if I go to the site here, the Netlify is deployed. I can see that I can access the demo page. That was really easy to get up and running. Every time there's a new commit on main, it will deploy that version. We're going to test out the functionality with the first basic serverless function here. So we're going to create a functions folder, and that was what we did. We specified where the serverless function would live. Functions. We're going to create one called, what should we call it? Basic.js. All right, so we have basic.js, and I actually have it copied and pasted the basic, so I'm just going to do this. I will call a few things out. All the serverless functions will have exports.handler. That just means the function's being exported. We're running async function, as I mentioned. But again, if you see a synchronous function in an example, something to note for a synchronous example, you might see callbacks. Don't worry about that for async. We just need to return something. That's why we just have a return statement here when this endpoint gets hit. Then we have a status code, so 200 yay, and then a message just saying that yay, it works. And that's it. So that is the basics of a function, really the core of what you would need to actually get one going. So let me go ahead and deploy this. We're going to push that up and check it out in Netlify real quick. Just processing. We will look at the deploy log. And I made a mistake. The function should be under Netlify. There we go. See, the folder is different, so we should actually have logs that tell us that we're doing it correct finally. And then once this is up, we will try to hit it. You can see finally it's hitting the Netlify functions directory. It's picking up the basic.js, so that's great. It is just about to be deployed. So let's go to Postman. So let's hit the URL here. We're going to need this. .netlify functions, and then the name of the function you want to hit. then we see it message, yay, it works. So that serverless function that does that very basic thing is up and running. Netlify handled all of the legwork with Lambda, getting everything set up, and I have a serverless function ready to rock. Now we're going to get on to the fun stuff. So the functions that I want to text and email. So for text, I'm going to create in the functions folder text.js. This one's going to text me. I'm going to have this basic one, and then we will update it here a bit. We're going to use Twilio for all of this. Twilio has some really powerful developer tooling. They have a lot of things that they do. They're always buying new companies, so I don't feel the need to list them all. For this project, we are going to use Twilio to send us a text message when prompted. We're also going to have another service, Mailgun, shoot us an email when prompted with the serverless function. So this text message will be Twilio, and we are going to add all the logic here in this piece. So this is the text.js, so a new function for that. So Twilio has a pretty good free plan. You're going to see when you create an account. Verify my email. So first you're going to want to buy a number. You want to do one with SMS. All right, so buy number with SMS available. We're going to configure it. So Netlify has some really good examples of serverless functions. This is the sending text messages option for sending the SMS messages via Twilio. Go to view code, you can see the source code here. So they have the same process.env, these things set up with more information around where you can get them, which I'll add to mine as well. You can see a lot of similar things that we talked about. It's a function. You can see that it's a callbacks. It's not asynchronous, so that's good to know. We're going to we can copy and paste this, or we can just bring it over. Let's see. I'll just kind of run through it actually. The SMS object format. This is sending body.image. We can skip that. This is a dated Twilio package, so we're going to actually change that a bit, but you can see the callback with the body and the message and the data, letting you know that you have a 200 and then what was sent, and then a catch block. So if something goes wrong, it's going to catch it. So we're going to customize ours a bit. It's going to be pretty similar though, the same concept. And I'm actually going to just copy the full thing and we can go through it. All right, so this is async. You can see really similar to what Twilio had. But for us, it's called client, not Twilio, but it's requiring Twilio, and this authenticates with the account SID and the auth token. So these are the two things you need to pass in to be able to authenticate and actually use Twilio. Axios we're using for the API call. So generally, we'll get into this after actually for the get URL, but I want to go, here's the SMS info that we had. So the info that you need, the body, so this is what you want to send, messaging service SID, and then who you're sending it to. And then once these are defined, I'm going to have the message body. So this is the function that we're using. So it was Twilio in the other example. For us, it's client.messages.create. And then SMS, and it's passing this in, and these are the minimum amount of things that I need to be able to send a message. Then I have a return statement. So again, async function, instead of the callback, you need a return statement. It's going to give me a status 200, JSON stringify, and you can give status yes, and then text message body. So a message body down here, that's actually when this is called, and it's going to be an await because it's an async function. If you're getting errors, make sure that you have an await here. I do this all the time where I've screwed up. I'm used to not doing it, depending on the function. So that's a kind of a phantom error to watch out for. And then a catch block. So if there's an error, you're going to get the error here. Status code is going to be e.status, and then you're going to let yourself know what the error is. And what we're doing for the get URL. So we're going to await the Axios.get. This is just, again, pretty standard library here, Axios. we're getting this. I'll show you what it looks like. Let's run over to Postman here. So it returns a file and then a URL, and we want the URL. This is an MP4, but it could be a JPEG as well. We can actually go see what it would look like. And you get to see this little pupper. That's a very, very good dog doing very sweet things. So these are the links that I want to get one each morning, get a link via text and a link via email. So we have that. We want the URL. So we're returning response.data and then .url because the URL is the piece that we want. And then we want to console log it if we're getting an error here. Then dog link. We're waiting to get the URL and it's returning that URL. And then we're passing dog link as body. So that should cover it all. The event is if you want to have something where, if you're sending a GET and then have a header or have some other, body, something else that you want to send along with it. So if you look here, you can send different things like form data key value. If you want to be a little more granular about what you do, you can have this event body do something like that for you. So just an optional note that we're just going to actually kick it off. Typically also when you're running something like this, you probably want to have some authentication mechanism, maybe JWT. We're not doing that. This is really basic. This is just like how to get it up and running. All right, so that should be it. Let's go ahead and get this up and running. I'm going to commit it. Right, I bet you're wondering how to go ahead and test this out, especially with process.env. So where do these come from? So we're not going to be able to hit this yet. So we're going to go to Netlify and add these environmental variables in. What you're going to want to do, so let's go back to the actual site settings, deploy environment, and then edit variables. We have 4 to add in. I'm going to add them in here. There we go. Let's save these. So these are going to inject them as process.env here. Let's check out the deploys and see how it's going. This is published. Build command, you can see that it's coming up with the text.js. That is really cool. And then let's go ahead and see how this is working. All right, y'all, I screwed up a bit. So my Envars were set incorrectly. The phone number destination was correct. This one was from the example kickoff messaging in Twilio. The account SID and auth token, those are under the account tab in the top right, and then API keys and tokens. And you're going to want to copy your auth token and the account SID that's associated with that, and then make sure you deploy after that. So now these are set up. The API endpoint here, wonderful. Getting sent some text messages and I'm getting dog videos. So that is actually wonderful. It's working. That is set up and no problems there. Again, I'll go through this. Exports.handler is mandatory. Skip these. Get URL gets the info. Get the SMS body. Get the message. Send it and get a return code 200 for this. And I'm seeing yes and then message body, and that's what I'm seeing over here. The yes, and then the message body down here. I can see the random dog. And this is the one I just got with that text message. You can see absolutely adorable dog. All right, next we're going to configure Mailgun to go ahead and send out some of these emails. A big caveat here is that to do this effectively, you might want to have your own domain set up and set things up right, but we're going to just get up and get running with the sandbox. It's a really good tool for automating emails as a developer. Get started. Great. And other than misspelling my name, I'm ready to get set up. Similar to what we just saw with Twilio, there's some great examples here on the Netlify site on how to go about this. So I'm going to go view code. This is using Airtable and Mailgun. So the Mailgun is the automation once there's an update or a webhook from Airtable. Sending a thank you email for that, but I'll go through some of it. So this is an async function similar to what we're doing, not taking an event, just an email that gets sent in. You see it sets up Mailgun here with API key and domain. Get the mail data that you need. So it's really similar from to subject line and text. Mailgun messages, sending, and then resolving. We're going to do that a little bit different, but pretty similar. This is just combining some of those things together. So we're going to skip the Airtable stuff, the save user. You see the exports handler here. So async event here, a try and a catch block. Really similar to what we did here. Let's go ahead and add in an email function. This is the one from the Mailgun docs. I just want to like talk through this really quickly, and then we'll go ahead and make our own. So API key, domain. This is the most recent. This is form data, and it's requiring Mailgun, and then it's setting this up with form data. So the Mailgun, and you have the client here. So really cascading down message out of the from to subject. You see the multiple twos. We're going to go ahead and probably when we do it, just simplify it with one, a subject line, whatever we want, probably dog video, dog pic. And I will have some sort of variable set here. And then it's going to use the client that's set up here, messages, create, and it has the domain message data. This is the sandbox domain, and then runs a then and a catch. Great. Great. So I have one set up that we'll go ahead and run through. So now we're going to make our own. I have it done here again. So similar Mailgun up here, requiring Mailgun JS. We're using Axios for the API call. We have event context wherever we need. We probably don't need that, but the event's going to be optional, similar to the text over here. So you see that really mirrors it. Getting URL, same function to get the URL from the random dog generator. Then we're using mg equals Mailgun. So API key, we're going to have Mailgun API key we need, and then Mailgun domain we need. Dog link's going to get us the URL, and then it's going to shoot us as data. So it's going to be from my dev account. It's going to be to my dev account. It's going to be from, we're going to make this up. This is going to go into spam. So something, again, you probably want to set up and be a little more judicious with and a little more deliberate with if you're going to actually do this so you can skip spam. Subject new dog. You can have an optional text here with just dog link. We're going to take this out actually. Instead, I'm going to actually render as HTML. So really basic HTML that we can send. I just think it's a little better for email best practice to do HTML. So message body in this case is going to be the this info. So you can see over here in the text, it was the sending the SMS, and then you send out the text message body as that. So the text is message body here are really similar in status. Sent a dog. Great. So we see we need these two, so we can go and update those. All right, two more Envars. All right, I've picked up my domain, which is a sandbox domain, and then my API key, which if you select send with API and not SMPT, then it'll prompt you and let you just copy and paste it. So let's save this and let's get this deployed. All right, that's up. Let's make sure it gets deployed. See that it's building here. We're going to wait for it to be published. Something I realized I didn't cover originally, and I'm going to make sure I do it here. To be installed. Twilio is already installed and Axios is already installed, so I'll make sure I include the steps and commands in order as well. I realized that when I saw in the logs that I was getting, wasn't getting the Mailgun JS module in the package.json. So it was installing that for me, but I did not do it correctly. So now this is going to be building again. Great, the build is complete. Now for email, let's go ahead and see. Wonderful. So it says sent to dog, the message is queued. Let's see if it made it. This will likely be in my spam. Looks safe, and something to note when it goes out of spam. Oops. Get the link. And there we go. So serverless function to send me an email with a dog link. Now we want to update it to actually send me these links every morning. So I have a text and an email waiting for me with 2 different dogs, hopefully. And for this, we're going to use cron jobs. So what is cron? Cron is a scheduler of work. It's similar to really seemingly everything in the space. It's named after Greek god Kronos, who is the god of time. Cron is typically used to monitor the status of something. So be it a server or service, kick off a sync, whatever, on a scheduled interval. I like to use, when I'm playing around with Cron tab Guru. I don't really recommend memorizing how to use cron syntax. I just look it up when I need it. There's a really good tool for that here, so you can see how to go about doing this. Many services also give you a UI option to do this. In our case, we're going to just do that. We're going to use CircleCI as our scheduling system for this. So before we set up CircleCI, let's go ahead and set up the config file. So really simple, we'll just create the folder config.yaml. I have this config here. So version 2.1, the workflow is just start cron, job cron me, Docker. I'm just going to run this on the base Docker image, and then it just calls 2 APIs. So it kicks off the email API and kicks off the serverless function of the text API endpoint. So let's commit this now. All right, now that we're in CircleCI, I see the Netlify serverless demo project here. I'm going to set it up. I have it committed to main already. It is found. Let's go ahead and build this. It's going to build. It's going to kick off the API endpoint. So I'm actually going to get a text and an email from this also. And let's go ahead and run the project settings. So I'm going to go to project settings. I'm going to go to triggers. I'm going to add a scheduled trigger to run this. Select all, start time. Let's do 9 a.m. just once. Branch on main. No parameter needed. I'm going to have it be done by the scheduling system. Great, that's it. I hope that was really helpful. I'm looking forward to getting dog pictures. Let me know if you have any questions.